Good afternoon and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. It is Saturday, March 8th, year of our Lord 2025. Before I go ahead and dive into the show, just wanted to mention, if you follow me on any of my social medias, you probably already saw this, but wanted to mention this for people that may not be following me on there. But I am doing another show. It's an NFL-only show. It's called From the Sidelines NFL. It's on the Sports Fluence podcast channel and podcast network. Go follow that channel if you'd like on places like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, things like that. But that show records every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Strictly football NFL show, strictly NFL football show. This is still going to be my main show, Sports Talk on a Budget here. Took a little hiatus, of course, after the Super Bowl was over. Took some time off. The NFL offseason got off to kind of a slow start, but really ramped up this past week and will ramp up even more this week coming forward. But before I get into the topics that I'm going to talk about today on the show, just wanted to go over basically who I am and why you should subscribe and like the show. This is Sports Talk on a Budget. It is found on places like YouTube right here. So like and subscribe to the video version of the show right here on YouTube. Leave a comment if you'd like to. However, if you prefer the audio version, I am available on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Pretty much wherever you get your podcast, go like and subscribe there as well. Sports Talk on a Budget is the name. Kody Dodier is the name on other places like Facebook, Instagram. You can find me under just my name, Kody Dodier. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and look at our show today. And this is going to be a strictly NFL show. So I know I'm doing another NFL show tomorrow night, but this show I get to have my own opinions uninterrupted, a little bit different forum than what is going to be tomorrow night on the From the Sidelines NFL show. So let's go ahead and look at my topics. And this is going to be my free agency preview. So free agency doesn't technically start until not this Monday, but the following Monday. But the open kind of tampering and early tampering period for free agency starts at noon Eastern this Monday, March 10th. And let's be honest, that's where everything starts to happen. Most players are either signed or you have an idea of where they're going by the time actual free agency starts because this early tampering period that starts on Monday. So going to do the preview today because a lot of stuff is going to happen on Monday and throughout this first week before the actual start of free agency. Some players have been requesting trades. Teams have let teams trade. So first topic is going to be the top moves that happened this past week. This past week was really active for trade requests, releases, trades, things like that. Really kind of jam-packed week. Going to go over each notable move that I thought was notable. Second topic of the day, I'm going to go over my top free agents and their landing spots. Going to give you my top 10 free agents for the 2025 offseason free agency season and give you their top 3 landing spots, at least in my opinion, where I think they would be good fits to play the 2025 season. And then we'll finish off the show. I'm going to look at probably about 5 to 6 players who I think could be traded and are rumored to be traded at this point, either requested to be traded or are given permission to seek a trade by their team, and what are some of the top landing spots for those players as well. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the show. And like I said, my first topic of the day is going to be just recapping this last week in football, the top moves that happened this past week in the NFL. The NFL, like I said, it got a little slow outside after the Super Bowl, a little slow off season, but man, has it picked up this past week. And like I said, I think it's really going to pick up these next coming weeks going into the draft as well. So the top move so far from this week in the offseason for the NFL, what happened yesterday, and that was Geno Smith being traded to the Raiders for a third-round pick. Now, the Raiders, I thought were going to maybe draft a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, may fall to them at 6. Maybe they try to kick the tires on Sam Darnold. They didn't like those options apparently, and they're going to go ahead and go with Geno Smith. They gave him a 2-year contract is what's going to happen there. So Geno Smith moves from the Seattle Seahawks to the Las Vegas Raiders. So that kind of opens up a lot of question marks for both the Raiders on what their future is under Geno Smith and what the Seahawks' future is at quarterback as well. Another trade happened. This, I believe, was on Wednesday, and that is wide receiver Christian Kirk for the Jacksonville Jaguars was traded in division to the Houston Texans for a 7th-round pick. I like this move for the Houston Texans. Tank Dell doesn't look like he's going to be ready for this coming season. Stephon Diggs, they probably don't re-sign. So to get another guy after Nico Collins, who is built himself into a bona fide top 10 receiver, pushing top 5. You get your number 2 option for CJ Stroud there in Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk had good years for the Jacksonville Jaguars before injury started to take over, and that you could say was with subpar quarterback play from Trevor Lawrence. Gets an upgrade at quarterback, in my opinion, with C.J. Stroud. Gets an upgrade in roster, so he's not going to be the number 1 option there. He'll fall in behind Nico Collins, and then when Tank Dell comes back, maybe he'll even fall to the 3rd spot. But I like that move for the Texans, getting Christian Kirk and getting a bona fide number 2 option until Tank Dell comes back behind Nico Collins for C.J. Stroud. And then I'm going to rattle off the players, the veteran players that have been released this week. We'll start off with the Chargers. They released Joey Bosa, kind of a move if you watched the From the Sidelines show on Sunday that we talked about a little bit. Not a surprising move there. I thought this was going to happen if they couldn't find a trade partner, so they couldn't, so they released Joey Bosa. Washington releases Jonathan Allen. This was another move that was talked about a lot. Not a shocking move there. Probably couldn't find a trade partner as well. Then you have the Jets releasing Devontae Adams. Also not a surprising move there. The Jacksonville Jaguars are cleaning house. Like I said, they just traded Christian Kirk, and now they release and cut Evan Ingram, their tight end, who I thought was pretty productive for them with their kind of underwhelming quarterback play. Seahawks released Tyler Lockett, so you have Tyler Lockett that's gone there. So looks like Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be the bona fide number 1 there. And then finally, Tennessee releases linebacker Harold Landry. Now, none of these players were shocking releases to me, but these are good veteran players, and I think all of them can make an impact on any team they go to and make that team a little bit better. They're probably going to look to be going to contending scenarios since none of these players that I listed have a Super Bowl championship right now, so maybe like to go to contending teams. But like I said, not a surprise any of these guys got released. Talked about Joey Bosa, talked about Jonathan Allen as well. Devontae Adams, it looks like they were looking for trade partners, but no one wanted to take on Devontae Adams. So all these 5 players or 6 players getting released were not a huge surprise. I would say probably the hugest surprise for me was Evan Ingram, because after you trade Christian Kirk from Jacksonville, I thought they would keep Evan Ingram in the fold there to go with their second-year stud wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. They decide not to, so we'll see exactly what direction the Jaguars are going to go this offseason. They got to get some weapons outside of Brian Thomas Jr. for Trevor Lawrence if they can salvage any kind of career for him at this point. And then we'll go to some re-signing and extending, and we'll go to the current Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. They re-signed all-pro linebacker Zach Bond. He was going to be one of the most highly sought-after free agents if he was going to get to free agency on Monday. Did not get the free agency on Monday. The Eagles are going to bring him back into the fold, so that is a huge move for the Eagles there to re-sign Zach Bond. And they also extend Saquon Barkley, making him the highest-paid running back in the entire league. Of course, he earned this. Ran for the most yards combined with the regular season and playoffs, more than any other running back in NFL history. 2,000-yard season, only the 6th running back to do that in NFL history. Had an opportunity to break the all-time rushing record set by Eric Dickerson, but sat out Week 18 and did not decide to play, so he did not get that record. But unbelievable season for Saquon Barkley. Deserves every penny of that extension that he gets from the Philadelphia Eagles, and he is going to be an Eagle for the foreseeable future. And then the Raiders extend Max Crosby, gave him a 3-year extension. I believe he's still got 2 years left on his current deal. So Max Crosby should be a Las Vegas Raider for the next 5 years. There was a little bit of trade talk here. People were talking maybe Max Crosby is a trade candidate. Didn't exactly come to fruition. I think he wants to be a Raider, but he wants to win. And the new hires of John Spytek as GM, Pete Carroll as head coach, and then, of course, with Tom Brady being in the front office, they didn't want to see a guy like Max Crosby, who's one of the best edge rushers in the entire league at a very important position there, walk away or be traded, so they extend him, and Max Crosby should be in the silver and gold for another 4 to 5 years at the very least. I don't see him coming up again in trades after this extension here. And then there was only 2 players to get the franchise tag. Last year we had a ton of players get the franchise tag. Only 2 players this year. We had Cincinnati franchise tagging wide receiver T. Higgins and Kansas City franchise tagging guard Trey Smith. Both those guys would have been highly sought after free agents. T. Higgins is a really good wide receiver and could be a number one in most places outside of where he's currently at, and maybe Minnesota and maybe a couple other places. And Trey Smith is one of the best guards in all of the NFL. And as you've seen throughout these last 3-4 seasons, the trenches are important. And I'll get to that a little bit more when I get to my free agents, my top free agents. But you want to be stout on the defense and, of course, the offensive line, both the interior and a tackle. Trey Smith, like I said, one of the best guards in the NFL. The Chiefs keep him under wraps. They need some help on the offensive line, as you saw in the Super Bowl, but they could not afford to let their best offensive lineman, at least in my opinion, alongside with Creed Humphrey at center, walk in free agency. So they franchise tag him, and they'll look to get a long-term deal to keep him in Kansas City for a long time. And then just a couple of trades as well. So we have the Bears trade for guard Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs. I love this move. The Bears got another offensive lineman earlier in the offseason. They get Joe Thuney, he played tackle this year for the Kansas City Chiefs and had kind of off and on success, but he is a guard, and when he plays guard, he is one of the best, probably 6 to 7 guards in the entire league. This bodes really well to protect Caleb Williams, develop that run game to take some pressure off of Caleb Williams. Really like this move from the Bears to kind of solidify their offensive line, which was probably their most glaring weakness from last year. And then Deebo Samuel, this was kind of the splash trade from last weekend, is traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Now the Washington Commanders, you have your number 1 option in Terry McLaurin. Now you have your number 2 option in Deebo Samuel. You got a guy who's played in a lot of big games, multiple Super Bowl games he's played in. I think 4 or 5 NFC Championship games he's played in, a lot of big playoff games, a lot of big regular season division games. You get a guy with a ton of experience of big games to give to a guy like Jaden Daniels on the opposite side of Terry McLaurin, and that really just helps your offense kind of take that next step. So I love that move for the Washington Commanders. And if you're the 49ers, you knew this was going to happen. You knew it was time to move on from Deebo. You get the Commanders to take his salary, which was a huge thing there. And now you can move on with some of your younger wide receivers and see what you can do and see what kind of contract Brock Purdy gets to kind of see where your future lies on the offensive side. And then the final kind of big move from this past week was that this actually, I believe, happened last Saturday, and this was the Los Angeles Rams extending Matthew Stafford another 2 years. Matthew Stafford kind of took a pay cut to stay in LA, but he stays on the Rams, who played the Eagles better than any team did this postseason. Sean McVay is one of the top 5 head coaches, no doubt, in the league. You stay on this team that's getting better and better each year, still have an opportunity to make another potential Super Bowl run. Stay there. There was other suitors like the Raiders, like the Giants, giving him a lot more money, but you'd almost have to kind of start over there. He's 37, 38 years old. You don't want to have to start over that late in your career with the team that doesn't exactly have as bright of a future, or as near a bright a future that the Rams currently do right now. So those are some of the big moves that happened this past week. Kind of wanted to recap that for anybody who hasn't been paying attention, who's actually been living their life and maybe not paying attention as much. Was a busy week this week in the NFL. A lot of moves, a lot of releases, a lot of re-signing, a lot of trades, and it's just getting started. And let's go ahead and move to my second topic, and that is going to be the top 10 top 10 players in free agency, in my opinion, and their top landing spots as well. And number 1, I'm going to go Ronnie Stanley, the offensive tackle from the Baltimore Ravens. As I mentioned before, we were talking about Trey Smith being re-signed by the Kansas City Chiefs. What's been evident over the last 4 to 5 seasons and even longer in the NFL, if you're really paying attention, is the trenches really help you win games and get to the next level. And I'm talking about the offensive line and the defensive line. I mean, just look at this. Look at the Eagles, who just won the Super Bowl. Have probably the best defensive line in the entire league, or at least top 3 in the entire league, and have one of the top 3 offensive lines in the entire league as well. So look at what that did for them. That defensive line was disruptive all year long in the playoffs and made Patrick Mahomes' life miserable in the Super Bowl as well. And that offensive line, the tush push, they're trying to get basically taken out of the league. And a big part of that is that offensive line. Really good players on the offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, things like that. You know the players on their offensive line. So what I'm trying to say is the trenches are important in this day and age, and really have always been important, but now I believe they're even more important as well. So Ronnie Stanley is going to be my number 1 player in free agency. Teams that I think are going to be in on him are my Patriots, I'm hoping, and I think they will be. I think the Chiefs will be in on him. They need offensive line help, as we've talked about already. And I believe the Washington Commanders will be in on him as well to put at that left tackle position to go ahead and protect their franchise and Jane Daniels. At number 2, we're going to stay in the trenches but move to the other side. And I have defensive tackle Milton Williams from the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw what he did in the playoffs. We saw what he did in the Super Bowl, was dominant alongside Jalen Carter in the Super Bowl and that defensive line. I think he's going to be a sought-after player as well at defensive tackle. I believe the Patriots will be in there as well. I believe the Bills will be in on this. And I believe the Chargers, now that they're losing Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, don't think they're going to ever resign either one of them, maybe Mack, but not Bosa. I think the Chargers will be in on Milton Williams, get some beef along that front, and get after guys like Patrick Mahomes and now Bo Nix, who's also in your division now with the Broncos. At number 3, we're going to stay on the trenches, like I said, and we're going to go to defensive end, and we're going to stay in Philadelphia, and we're going to go Josh Sweat, the defensive end from the Philadelphia Eagles. Had a really good year this year, was consistent all year long. I think there could be a lot of teams in on him as well. Cardinals seem to be a huge favorite for him. I like the Panthers to be in on him. They need to kind of fix their defense after losing Brian Burns in that trade last offseason. And then finally, I think the Chargers will be in on him as well. So like I said, the Chargers are losing both Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack in free agency. I think they will pursue that defensive line and those trenches on the defensive line. And you know that Jim Harbaugh is all about the trenches on both sides of the ball. He's going to be big on that as well. So the Chargers, I think, will be in on Josh Sweat as well. There's going to be a theme in these teams. There's about 5 or 6 teams that have a lot of cap space that need a lot of help, in my opinion. So they're going to kind of be in and out. In my favorites here, I think there's going to be about 4 to 5, 6 maybe teams that are going to be really active in free agency. So they're going to kind of litter my favorites list as well. So at number 4, we're going to go to the offensive side now. We're going to get away from the trenches. We're going to go wide receiver Chris Godwin from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chris Godwin, he's one of the most reliable players in the entire league when he's healthy. He can play on the inside at the slot. He can play on the outside at X receiver as well. Really good hands, really good after the catch. Durability issues are a question mark. He's going to be, I believe, 30 in midway through the season here as well. So question mark with a little bit of age as well. But when he's healthy and he's on the field, he is a reliable player. And I think he could get, and he is kind of the belle of the ball with the wide receivers in free agency right now. By far, I believe, the best wide receiver in free agency. So he's going to command a lot of attention. I like the Patriots to be in on this. I like the Panthers to be in on this. I like the Broncos to be in on this, to go ahead and pair him with Bo Nix and go alongside some of the guys they already have to kind of beef up that wide receiving core as well. At number 5, we're going to stay on the offensive side. We're going to go to Sam Darnold, the quarterback from Minnesota. Sam Darnold had a career year, of course. Best year he's had as a pro by far, even though he kind of, the last 2 games, the Week 18 Sunday Night Football game against the Lions was not great, and that Monday night playoff game against the Rams was not great either. But he was an MVP candidate all season long until the last two games of the season. He had a really good season all year long. I know he was playing with guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, but Jordan Addison was in out of the lineup with injuries, and Justin Jefferson also suffered some injuries as well. So Sam Darnold, I think, resurrected his career with Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings. I think he could get a lot in free agency as well. What I want to look at for him, I had the Raiders on there, but now that the Raiders have traded for Geno Smith, that is out. But the team that Geno Smith has left, I believe, is in on this. I think the Seahawks will be in on Sam Darnold. I think the Indianapolis Colts will be in on Sam Darnold. I believe the organization and the coaching staff does not believe in Anthony Richardson. They want to bring in a guy who they think they can compete with, still have a good roster in Indianapolis. So I think the Colts will be in on Sam Darnold. And I think the Tennessee Titans will be in on Sam Darnold. It's no mystery around the league that number 1 overall pick for the Titans, they're kind of putting it out there for someone to offer them a decent deal. They're not enamored with the 2 quarterbacks, whether it's Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders at that number 1 spot. If they can get a good haul for someone to move up into the number 1 spot, they would do it. So that could be a landing spot for Sam Darnold, and maybe the Titans do a 2-year deal with Sam Darnold and then try to get into the quarterback pool next year, which is supposed to be much better. But that could be an opportunity there as well. And then we'll go ahead and move to my 6th overall player in free agency, and that is Javon Holland, the safety from the Miami Dolphins. Rangy safety, good ball skills, good hands, pretty solid tackler as well. Teams I think will be in the mix on him. Like I said, you'll see a theme with a lot of these teams. I think the Commanders will be in the mix on him. They need to get better in their secondary. I think the Broncos will be in the mix as well. Get better in their secondary outside of outside of their stud quarter Patrick Surtain II. And then I think the Packers. The Packers, I think, are a team. Maybe they look to trade Jair Alexander. That's been kind of floated out there a little bit. But I think they need to get better in their secondary as well. Jair Alexander is getting older, and like I said, he could be traded. So bringing a safety like Javon Holland can really help your secondary, especially in the division with a guy like Jared Goff. And you have to go against other players in the NFC as well. And then we're going to move to my number 7 overall free agents in this offseason, and that is going to stay at the defensive back position, and that is going to be Travarius Ward, the cornerback from the San Francisco 49ers. Travarius Ward had a really good season, was kind of cut short. We're not going to get into the situation there. It was a really sad situation that happened with him. Cut short there, but was having a solid season for the 49ers before that happened. Still a really good defensive back and cornerback in this league. I think some teams that'll be in on him are going to be the Chargers. I think the Chargers will be in on him. They need some secondary help. The Jacksonville Jaguars are a sneaky team in this. They obviously need some secondary help, and they could just use top-end players on their team because that roster is really getting depleted at this point. And then I'm going to throw the Packers in there as well. Maybe you put him on the other side of Jair Alexander. Maybe he's a guy that takes over for Jair Alexander because you've traded him. But I think secondary will be a position of need for this Green Bay Packers team. And then we're gonna stay at defensive back again, and we're gonna go to DJ Reed, the quarterback from the New York Jets. Solid season on the other side from Sauce Gardner for the Jets. He's gonna be a guy again. I'm gonna mention another team I think is gonna be in on the secondary position for free agency this offseason. I think the Packers will be in on him. I think the Bengals will be in on him. They need all the defensive help they could get. I think the Bengals will be in on him. And watch out for the Lions. Now, the Lions have drafted pretty well at the secondary position. They could use another kind of not elite player, but an above-average player and a guy like DJ Reed. I think that could really help. Like I said, you're in a division with Jordan Love. You're going to have to play other up-and-coming players. Maybe Caleb Williams continues to develop and gets better. You're going to have to worry about that as well. So get another secondary player on that defense to really help you solidify that back end of your defense there, along with some of the other guys you've drafted as well. Number 9 position on my top 10 free agents for this 2025 offseason is going to be linebacker Nick Bolton from the Kansas City Chiefs. Another guy, he really kind of fit that Steve Spagnuolo mode at linebacker, rangy linebacker, good tackler, good in space. Not the greatest hand, not the greatest cover linebacker, but still an above average at that position as well when it comes to covering. Some teams I think can be on the mix with him. Tennessee Titans, of course, you just released Harold Landry, so you replace him potentially with a guy like Nick Bolton. Bengals, like I said, they can use the help at every single level, the defense, as much as they can. So the Bengals, I think, should be in on him. And I think the Lions will be in on him. You pair him with a guy like Alex Anzalone. You have some younger guys like Gonzalez as well at the linebacker position. Keep getting better on defense. That was your Achilles heel. I know you had a ton of injuries, but you can't expect all those guys to come back healthy and play like they did before their injuries. So solidify some positions. Nick Bolton could go a long way in doing that as well. And then finally, rounding out my top 10 free agents of this 2025 NFL offseason, I have Khalil Mack, defensive end and linebacker from the LA Chargers. And here is what I think here. I think there is an opportunity for the Chargers to re-sign Khalil Mack. So they're going to be one of the favorites. I think he can go back to a place he already was in Chicago. So that could be an opportunity as well. I think Chicago is looking to just get better. They're a team that has a decent amount of cap space as well. They want to get better at a myriad of positions. Trenches on the defensive side could be that position for them with Khalil Mack. And then another team I've mentioned a bunch, the Washington Commanders. Can you get a guy to kind of solidify that defensive line? You just released Jonathan Allen. You need some guys along that defensive front to get after guys like a Jalen Hurts, like a Dak Prescott when he's healthy, and whoever the Giants end up with, and other guys in the division or in the conference as well, like Jordan Love, potentially Caleb Williams, Jerry Goff, things like that. Get better along that defensive front. Kind of solidify the defensive front with a guy like Khalil Mack, who I think still has enough left in the tank to be a producer on a contending team. I do think he's got enough in the tank for that. And then we'll go ahead and finish off with my third and final topic, and that is going to be the top players looking to get traded and the top landing spots for them. We're going to start off with the player who I think is requesting a trade, who is the best player doing that, and that is going to be Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is one of the 10 best players in the NFL at any position. I don't care. He's one of the 10 best overall players in the NFL. I think the Browns need to grant his wish and move on. Let him go. He's been a great player for you. He's been a model citizen outside of that incident with Mason Rudolph like 5-6 years ago. Outside of that, he's been a model citizen. He's been a guy who shows up on time, produces every single year in and out. One of the best, like I said, one of the best players in all the league. Go ahead and do the right thing, Browns, and grant him a trade. And I think Myles Garrett, now this is going to be scary, some of the teams I list off. A team I'm listing off, and this could really scare the entire NFL, that is the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to pursue Myles Garrett pretty damn hard. I think they're going to pursue him pretty damn hard. That'll be interesting to put him along a defensive line with guys like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and other guys they got along that defensive front. That'll be really scary. The Detroit Lions, I think, should be in on Myles Garrett. Put him on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson's coming off that injury. Maybe won't be 100% early on in the season. It'll really help him kind of get back into that groove when he's got a guy on the other side like Myles Garrett. So I think that could be a huge turning point there as well. And then the LA Chargers. You're losing Joey Bosa. You're probably not going to re-sign Khalil Mack. Get a guy like Myles Garrett in the fold, and he could do the job of both of those guys, basically, at this point in his career. So those are the three teams I think will be in on Myles Garrett. The number 2 player I think that requests their trade or is going to be traded in the NFL is going to be DK Metcalf. Now, I don't know what's going on in Seattle. You release Tyler Lockett, you trade Geno Smith, and now DK Metcalf wants out. So that offense in Seattle is going to probably look drastically different this 2025 season than it did in 2024. But DK Metcalf has been productive, but has been kind of disappointing at times for the Eagles, for the Seahawks as well. But still a guy I think could be a number 1 wide receiver, still a really good, productive guy, big, strong, good hands, good after the catch, kind of like a poor man's Terrell Owens, in my opinion, but still I think he could really help a team as well. So I think DK Metcalf, top spots I could see him going. The Patriots, I think, have a ton of draft capital and have a ton of cap space to pay him what he's looking for in a contract. So that'll be interesting. The Green Bay Packers. The Packers have a lot of good wide receivers, but don't have any elites or great wide receivers that you would call the number 1. Could they get DK Metcalf in there, send some of their other wide receivers to Seattle, and solidify? Now you have your number 1 option in DK Metcalf. That could be interesting there. And then another team I've mentioned a lot, the LA Chargers. The Chargers, you got a great wide receiver, I think, in the second round last year in Ladd McConkey, and he really had a good year. I don't know if he's ever going to be a number 1 overall receiver for any team in this league, but he's kind of like that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker kind of mold, a guy like that, Cooper Kupp a little bit as well. But I like the Chargers there to get him. You pair him with Ladd McConkey and then, of course, Justin Herbert, a quarterback. Now you're really cooking with gas on the offensive side, and maybe we can kind of see the ceiling for Justin Herbert in this league as well. And then the number 3 player that's requesting a trade, or actually his team has let him look for trades, is Trey Hendrickson. The guy who led the league in sacks last year, Trey Hendrickson, the defensive end from the Cincinnati Bengals, was pretty much the entire defense this year for the Cincinnati Bengals. To say they had one of the worst defenses in the league, but their one bright spot was Trey Hendrickson. He's kind of, if Myles Garrett doesn't get dealt and the Browns kind of dig their feet in, I think a lot of teams will be after Trey Hendrickson in the offseason as well. The Chargers are a team I throw in there. The Commanders, I think, could be in on Trey Hendrickson as well. They got a lot of assets and have cap space, and you're going to look to go all in while they have Jaden Daniels on his rookie contract. And then look out for the Bears. I said the Bears would be in on Khalil Mack. I think they'll be in on Trey Hendrickson. They want to go all in as well. It's not as much as the Commanders because they haven't seen as much from Caleb Williams as Jaden Daniels has done for the Commanders. But I think they want to kind of capitalize on, maybe the Lions take a step back by losing their coordinators. The Packers are kind of in flux right now. What are the Vikings going to be if they decide to go with J.J. McCarthy instead of Sam Darnold? So this could be a time for the Bears to kind of get up there, get a lot of good players. You have a lot of cap space. You have draft picks. take a shot with some of these top end players in a trade as well and kind of put your team in the right trajectory for the first time. And I really like the hire of Ben Johnson as well. So that is an interesting player as well. Trey Hendrickson is a very, very good top 5 defensive end in the league. And then we'll go back to the wide receiver position. We have Cooper Kupp. Now, Cooper Kupp is going to be traded from the Los Angeles Rams, and if they can't find a trade partner, I believe they will just cut him and release him. But here's some teams. I think he can go to contending teams, maybe be like a wide receiver 2, but be a really viable, reliable option for some of the top wide receivers and teams in the league, starting with the Kansas City Chiefs. Xavier Worthy, now there was just news that he was arrested last night for domestic violence, so we'll see how that pans out. That could be an issue there, but he has kind of turned into their number 1 wide receiver. But it was disappointing what they got from DeAndre Hopkins. They're not going to re-sign him. They just re-signed Marquise Brown, but they didn't really get a lot from him. He was injured most of the year and then came back and was just okay. So we'll see what happens with Marquise Brown as well. But I think you bring in a guy like Cooper Kupp, if he could stay healthy, could really develop well with Patrick Mahomes and maybe not be their number 1 wide receiver, but be a really reliable option in that offense for Patrick Mahomes as well. Buffalo Bills, kind of same thing. Josh Allen has a lot of good players, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, guys like that. You have the 2 tight ends in Kincaid and Knox. Cooper didn't really do much for them, so they won't bring back Amari Cooper, I don't believe. Could a guy like Cooper Kupp be a reliable option for Josh Allen like Khalil Shakir has been? That could really help him as well. And then the final team is going to be the Denver Broncos. What do you want to pair with a young quarterback like Bo Nix? You want to pair him with a guy, when healthy, in Cooper Kupp, who is reliable as they come. So that could be a really nice option for them as well. We'll stay at the wide receiver position. And not sure if this guy is available, but it seems like he is. There's been a lot of chatter that he could be available, and that is Brandon Ayuk from the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they've already traded Deebo Samuel. Would they trade Brandon Ayuk as well? Rumors are that they don't love the contract that they decided on last offseason for him. I believe they kind of got played by Brandon Ayuk last year and shouldn't have signed him to that extension. Should have maybe looked for a trade partner last year. Now his value isn't as high coming off of a torn ACL season. But can he still get maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick for them? And do they move on from him, go with their younger wide receivers in Pearsall and Jennings, and Kittle is still there as well, and kind of free up some money to give Brock Purdy as well? Teams I could see him going to are the Patriots, Chargers again, Broncos again. I think both those teams, all 3 of those teams will be heavy in on the wide receiver market, both in free agency, draft, and in trades as well. And then the final player I have listed on this category as well is the running back from the Chicago Bears, DeAndre Swift. This draft is one of the deepest drafts in history at the running back position. I could see the Bears trying to get someone early in this draft, maybe in the 1st round, late 1st round if they want to jump back in with a trade, or get someone in the 2nd round and maybe moving off of DeAndre Swift and looking to maybe trade him. Teams I could see trading for him, Dallas Cowboys. They need all the help they can get at the running back position after what we saw last year. And Rico Dowdle may not come back to them, and I thought he was by far their best running back down the stretch for the Dallas Cowboys. Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco was good early, and last year was kind of just sputtered, had the injuries. When he came back, he wasn't as effective. Do you bring Kareem Hunt back? What is the situation there? Can you get a guy like DeAndre Swift who can still be a difference maker, is good out of the backfield for Mahomes as well? That could be an interesting part there. And the Washington Commanders. You had Brian Robinson, you had Austin Eckler. Both those guys were good. Neither one of them were great. I think DeAndre Swift would be an upgrade over both of those guys at this point in their careers. So I think that could be huge for Jaden Daniels as well. But those are some of my top. I actually ended up listing 6 players that could be traded in this offseason. Like I said, Monday, noon Eastern time, so 10 Mountain Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific time is when the free agency open tampering period starts in the NFL. There's going to be a lot of moves that happen fast and furious, so keep an eye out if you can. There's going to be a lot of moves here. Just wanted to kind of preview what could happen here. I will preview it and break it down and talk about it even more tomorrow night on the show that I'm on, From the Sidelines NFL, on the Sports Fluent podcast. There's me and the boys there. We'll talk about a lot more, but before I go, just want to remind you, as always, this is Sports Talk on a Budget. If you like this show, please like and subscribe right down here on YouTube on Sports Talk on a Budget. Smash that like, smash that subscribe right down there. If you prefer the audio version, which is fine, please go ahead and find me on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or basically wherever you get your podcast. Thank you again for watching and listening, and have a great day. Have a great weekend, and God bless.